Hey there, thanks for joining us for Season 2 of The Dominant Ones, where we explore mastery and the pursuit of excellence through being dominant. Our guest today is Dr. Oz, and he's here to talk about the power of storytelling and passion. Enjoy the show.
Well, one of the things too, Doc, you know this about me, I know this about you, that we share some of the similar thoughts on healthcare and how people need to find more healthy options to live every day. And that's why we are happy to have you on the show, because we want to know your thoughts on where it started. Where did it start for you? Where did you find that dominance to do something that you were so passionate about? You know,
my parents are immigrants to this country. They didn't know the game. They didn't know how to play. So when you don't know the rules, you don't do so well. And so though my dad was a physician and came here to train, I remember very humble beginnings as I was just trying to get through school, not even having English as the primary language that I was raised with. And over time, I began to realize that you have an opportunity with the American dream to own your own future. And I'm never going to sacrifice the agency that I believe I control about the things that I can learn and improve myself on. But I got to make the playing field level enough that I have a chance to succeed. And I was blessed by having mentors along the way who gave me a chance. Oprah, by the way, being a big one, who's partner on my show, and a woman who taught me a lot about how to tell the story around health to an American public that desperately wanted to hear it. But America hadn't been giving and getting the story around health because we hadn't given it to you. Within medicine, in the ivory towers of our institutions, we knew, for example, that eating better and losing weight not just makes you look better, but it actually can treat your diabetes, your high blood pressure, reduce your risk of cancer, help you sleep better. I mean, this litany of things that would benefit you that people just didn't appreciate. So when I started doing the Oprah show, this is back around 2003, most people would sort of their jaws drop when they heard these things. And Oprah was the one who gave me the confidence and the wisdom, but also the discipline to understand how to talk to America about things that really matter. And she taught me early on, and this is true for motivation in sports, in your family, and anything else you do, is that if you get people to think about the event emotionally, they'll act on it. People don't change based on what they know. They change based on what they feel. And so I began to appreciate that medicine, although it's based in science, if you get people to feel differently about what you're saying, folks will act. So how do you get people to feel differently? Use their family, because they love their families. That if their real goal is to walk their children down the aisle to marry them off, it's not in their best interest. It's impactful. I still operate. I tell my patients that, if the people who brought you here who love you, right? If you really believe they care about you, all you've got to do is love yourself as much as they love you, and you'd stop eating the wrong things, stop doing the things that are maladaptive for you. Even if when you started doing those things, they were very adaptive, right? Because doing the things that aren't good for you made sense at one point in your life. But over time, you ought to figure out that it's not in your best interest. And that's a transition that people have to respect. And athletes figure it out early, or they don't get to play in the pros. They don't become dominant the way that Dominique became if they don't figure that out early on. That's why I've always respected professional athletes and love having them as guests, because one way or another, they got the message.
It's interesting. It's about storytelling, isn't it, in a way? It's about framing things in a way that actually people that like you said, people can absorb. It's not about browbeating them. I've noticed that about politics. I've noticed that about scientific communication in general. My wife teaches scientific communication. She tries to help scientists learn how to communicate what they're saying in a way that resonates with lay people. But that's what you're talking about. And storytelling is a narrative. It's finding what connects with somebody on a personal level, and it's about emotion. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, think about the Bible, right? They could have just written the 10 Commandments down. It'd be a lot shorter, and you're out. But all those stories are in there for very important reasons. We see the flaws of humanity through those stories, and you appreciate the wisdom of the struggle and how you get through it. And different religions tell the stories in different ways, which is sort of ironic because the stories are just a way of getting to the end point. It's a very powerful mechanism, but we have these archetypes in our lives. All humans do. In fact, we wouldn't be where we are right now if we hadn't evolved and understanding that there were deeper truths around their existence than just that the sun comes up in the morning. I went to visit Göbekli Tepe, which is the oldest known temple in the world. It's in southern Turkey. It's very near where Abraham met Sarah, millennia later. But about 12,000 years ago, they started building these temples, and they realized that there were things beyond themselves that would give them faith in each other primarily. And by working together, they began to build these agricultural communities. Now think about this. It's a complete paradigm shift from what we thought. We thought religion came about because we had a little free time to come up with stories. It's the opposite. Humans evolved to where we are because our ancestors had an ability to see beyond them, just themselves, and appreciate the sacredness of each other. And so that story that began 12,000 years ago became a pretty fascinating, complex series of documents. Some of them told in faith-based documents, other just in oral traditions. You tell stories to your kids and they remember them and they translate them to the future. And in modern American society, we cannot forget the importance of that. Those traditions are vitally important, in part because they organize your life, but they also give you agency over your future. That way, you have a bigger role to play in your destiny than anyone else can limit you to.
Do you think this storytelling, the idea of storytelling, and realizing the importance of it, is what led you to be a communicator, to be a broadcaster? Was it that desire? I mean, you were already a surgeon, but was that part of it? I want to get my message out to the world.
Well, I always joke that I went to the Life Magazine School of Medicine. I love pictures. I love stories. I love understanding the whys behind illnesses. If I can appreciate the story behind how something was discovered or why it's important, I can process it better, but I can also explain it to my patients more effectively. So I began using it for my patients, and I'm a professor, right? So I would teach it to my students. And I began to realize the only people who don't have this information are the people who are getting sick and don't realize it. Because by the time I'm about to open your chest with a bandsaw, because I'm a heart surgeon, it's a little late to tell you the story. If I can get to you a couple of weeks or months or even years before that, I can change your health destiny dramatically. And because I happened to come of age in an era that we were starting to popularize medicine, I was blessed to be able to tell that story in a way that resonated. And my show, which, it was very uncommon that you would have envisioned telling the story of health over the course of an hour show, because most of the times health was delivered in 60-second sound bites. But that was because we were just giving them the facts, right? And the Dragnet School of Medicine, remember that show Dragnet, Sergeant Friday, just the facts, ma'am? Right? He just pull out the details where people can't process that. Take the vaccine story we're dealing with right now. People are petrified over this vaccine, or they think people who are resistant to the vaccine are dumb. Well, neither side's right. There's a story to be told about why the vaccine makes sense, how it came about, why it might make sense for you, what's the strategy to get you more comfortable so you'll actually get the vaccine if it's the right time for you to get it. If you tell the story in a way that's non-threatening and enlightening, which is what I primarily do, I always would tell my team, our job is to bring light to the world. Literally on television, you bring light into the room, but you're also enlightening people, educating them as you lighten their load. That's our job. And stories can do that if you tell them the right way, but you got to take the time to craft a story.
Well, Doc, you make a lot of sense there when you talk about storytelling and getting people to follow you. It takes a dominant attitude, but also takes a authentic belief in people where they can relate to you. And you've been able to transcend that to another level, where you're getting people to believe in what you're preaching, what you're trying to get them to do to change the way they live their lives. I mean, I'm one of those people because, healthcare is kind of a calling for me. So I understand what it takes to live healthy and take care of yourself, because I was at one of those points where I had a little bit more weight on me than I wanted, but I looked at some of the lifestyle changes that I need to make to manage my diabetes, potentially hypertension, and any other little disease that you may have. If you just change and do the right things, listen to people who've been through what you've gone through. And so you've been able to take that and take it to another level. And I think that's kind of changed your dominance as your career has grown. You've learned how to do even more. And that's what I see about some of the things you've done in your career.
Well, if you get influencers to share their personal stories, that brings real emotion into the discussion. But there's so many ways of making it easier for people to demystify the world around them. And let's just go back to the vaccine a second, because it's in the story. So you might think, well, they must have rushed this thing out, right? I mean, they made the vaccine in 6 months. Normally it takes 5 years. Obviously they cut corners. Well, no, they cut red tape. So let's tell the story. First off, we are trying to cure cancer. That's really what the goal was with this technology. They realized that if you can identify a cancer cell by some marker on the surface. So imagine it's like a thief coming into your home and you can recognize its jacket. then you can actually know what a thief looks like versus your relatives coming in. So identify something that's safe, like the jacket that the virus or that the cancer cell is wearing, and then you can begin to beat it back. Well, that jacket is, in the case of the virus, is the spike protein. And so it's just a marker. It's not dangerous at all. It's just what the virus is wearing into the house, into your cell, into your body. And so we can make these mRNA vaccines, which basically means you're taking a little snippet of that spike protein, very safe, wrap it in some fat so it tastes better to the body, put it inside the body, let the body absorb it, process it, identify that it's not its own, it's foreign. So make an antibody against it. Straightforward, simple story. Now, if you actually get exposed to the real virus, which you weren't, by the way, because the vaccine doesn't have any virus in it, therefore it can't hurt you. But if you get exposed to the real virus, your immune system has been tipped off about what the virus is wearing. You can quickly make an antibody against it. And then you take it one step further and say, we don't have enough vaccines anyway. So if you don't want to get the vaccine, it's okay. Wait in line. Let's see how tens of millions of people, including your family and your neighbors, do with this vaccine. And then, if it makes sense, you'll go ahead and get it as well. If you tell the story that way, people understand with pretty good detail how the vaccine was generated, why it was done so quickly, because it was actually, we were drafting off research being done to cure cancer. And by the way, you will use mRNA tools to cure cancer in our lifetime. So this is all good stuff for humanity. And now you feel a little more comfortable with the science. This is not some mad, crazy dash where you're going to grow a tail in 5 years or horns even earlier. This is a technology that was already being evaluated. We just were able to change course quickly, pivot, and make something that makes sense for the virus. And that's the story of how science progresses when it happens correctly.
That's beautiful.
I have a question, so slightly more general health question. What is if you were put on the spot, what is your definition of health, and has that evolved over the years of your career, telling stories, practicing medicine, and just becoming an older, wiser man, presumably?
Oh, my definition has changed a lot. I don't know how much wiser I am. I'm definitely older. I can't jump anymore. I can prove that in the basketball court. But Dominique and I were shooting around at the Hawks Auditorium, and I tell you, he can still get up. I didn't leave the ground.
Hey, the set shot's making
you got a nice looking jump shot, though.
Yeah. So
set shot's making a comeback, I think.
Exactly, set shot. Two-handed Bob Cousy set shot. So here's the deal. When I was training, I was taught that being healthy just meant you weren't sick.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, most of America is living at 50th percentile of who they could be. And I began to appreciate that health was optimal performance, not acceptable performance. So how do I move from being tolerant to my failings to being really on my game? And again, using the tools that professional athletes have evolved, you get pretty darn good at understanding tactics that make you function at 100th percentile of who you could be. And there's many examples of this. There's physical activity exercises where you do, these different approaches to peak exercise. Every 10 minutes, you go for as hard as you can for a minute. There are tactics that have been shown to be beneficial in professional athletes. Some of these are tools that have worked for bodybuilders, like intermittent fasting, where you try to delay your breakfast till late in the morning and then try to finish dinner early as possible. So even if you eat the same number of calories as you would have in a normal day, where you eat all day long from the moment you get up to the moment you fall asleep, you actually perform better, literally physically and emotionally and mentally, but you also lose weight, even with the same number of calories. So these tactics begin to spill over into modern life, and you begin to say, okay, I can delay breakfast a couple hours. I can work out for less time, but go harder when I work out. These tactics begin to translate to us be able to perform at our optimal level. Take high blood pressure as an example. The average blood pressure in America is about 130/85. Well, the average isn't good enough, because the average person suffers from high blood pressure in a way that leads to heart disease and lots of other damage. In fact, it's the number one ager of all. So you don't want to be average with your blood pressure. You want to be optimal with your blood pressure, which instead of being 130/85 is more like 115/75. And even knowing what those numbers mean helps train you to become the optimal person, so you can live as long, live as well. Again, walk your kids down the aisle, be there for their graduation, all the things that really should matter to you. And they're not big shifts. It's a little nudge in the right direction, and you all of a sudden begin living a much more fulfilling life. That's what true health's about.
And that's interesting too. You say even knowing what those numbers mean is huge, and that's part of storytelling, isn't it? That's part of people understanding or receiving the information in a way that they can actually absorb, and it sticks with them. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to my doctor and she says, these are your numbers, and I'm like, okay. What is that good? What does that mean? And the number of times is literally every time. It just doesn't stick with me.
When you want those water cooler moments,
Yeah.
realities that will change your life. And remember, they're not that many numbers you have to remember.
Right.
Just like a bank account, there are a couple key things you got to know. Your health sort of the same thing. Blood pressure, by the way, is one of them. But I'll tell you an early experience I had with Oprah that Dominic will enjoy. I really didn't know her that well. We were early on in our career collaborating. I ultimately did 60, 70 shows with her. But early on, I didn't know how much I could push the envelope. And so I knew that she liked having fun. So we were trying to deal with the key number of how often you pass gas. Now, the reason that's important is that if you don't understand how your intestines work, you can't process them. So people want to know, how many times should I go to the bathroom a day or a week? What's too many? What's too little? So I was talking about that. By the way, you want to go to the bathroom less than 3 times a day, more than 3 times a week. That's the range. So you don't have to be perfect once a day. You could be more, a little less, but in that range.
Does that change as you get older?
It shouldn't change a lot, although it
Okay.
does. People get constipated as they get older, but you shouldn't. You should adjust what you're eating, how much water you're drinking, and most importantly, physical activity for a lot of people. Because if you're sedentary, your intestines fall asleep too. Nothing moves. So if you're active and eating the right things with lots of fluids, you'll actually continue to have 1 or 2 healthy bowel movements a day. But the issue I was struggling with was gas, because people are always embarrassed. Am I supposed to pass gas or not? What do I do? Do I pretend I didn't pass it and really pass it? So I said, Oprah, let's go through the numbers here. Men and women will pass gas roughly once an hour. This show is about an hour long, the Oprah Winfrey Show. So the odds are I've already passed gas. In fact, I can tell you I've already passed gas on the set. And the odds are Oprah has as well. And I just let the moment sing, little pause, pregnant pause, which she, of course, confirmed. Yeah. But she started laughing, and I realized we're going to have a lot of fun together. Because when you can talk about things that you first heard when you were 5 years of age, and maybe you didn't get it right, you didn't hear it right, maybe your mom got it wrong, maybe the information changed. Those are the kinds of conversations that remind you how cool the human body is.
Yeah.
And we've got this great foundation which ShareCare has been helping, called Health Corps. And Health Corps is like the Peace Corps. You take these young, energetic college grads, you put them in schools around the country, and they're mentors to high school students. And with Health Corps, one of the primary things we do is try to get kids to recognize that if you can control what's happening inside your body, you can change the world outside of it. That's one of the goals that we have with getting kids to appreciate the sacredness of their own bodies. They won't abuse their bodies if they realize how special they are. In fact, it's the most precious thing your parents will ever give you. So you should never waste it.
Doc, I really love this conversation when you're talking about health, because, I've tried to help people make lifestyle changes. And just for myself, I always believe you have to build a relationship with your physician, because you have to build a portfolio of your health so your physician can show you what you need to work on, what's going on with your health. So now you built that portfolio. So if something goes wrong, you know how to fix it. A lot of times people are afraid of what they don't understand, because they always think they're going to hear bad news when they go to a doctor. I was one of those guys, but my doctor, after I went to him the first time, he said, look, you can see me now, or you're definitely going to see me later. So let's make those lifestyle changes. Do what you need to do to live healthy. And even during COVID, I've lost like 12, 13 pounds, probably a little bit more than that, just making changes in my diet, a little activity, and the things that I do as far as to keep myself going, from a health standpoint. Make sure I take my medication the right way until I get to the point where I can take less. I mean, you should never take less until you talk to your physician. A lot of people, when they start feeling well, what is the first thing they do? Mm-hmm. They take less medication, or they come off the medication. So continue to build that relationship with your physician. So that's why I love this conversation, because healthcare is a lot of times not talked about enough.
Well, I love the fact that you lost weight during COVID. In fact, one of the smartest things anybody can do, it's the most patriotic thing you can do, is to lose weight while you have the time, which is during COVID, it's all we have is time. And the reason is because you reduce your chance of dying, literally. In New York City, as a good example, if you were not overweight, you just didn't seem to have problems usually. I mean, it's rare, it happened, but it's uncommon. So 90% plus of people admitted to the hospital in New York City were obese and had a complication from obesity, like diabetes or hypertension. So losing a couple pounds even beginning to lose weight dramatically changes the amount of inflammation inside the body. And to the point that you're I think making to everybody, there's some things in life you can control. There's some things you can't. Happiness is because you can divide those two up. So you're never going to change your spouse. So give up on that one. You can make them better with you. You can working together with them. And in my house, you should know the prosecution never rests. So I get a full dose of criticism when I don't do things right. But there are other things like my weight, like my ability to perform physically and mentally that I have some control over. So why abdicate that responsibility to others? Take charge of it and lead the way. And then because you're actually a source of good information, people will follow you. And there's a fine line between vision and hallucination. But Dominique, what you're expressing now is a true vision because people can see it and they can follow you to the promised land.
Exactly. So, Doc, one of the questions we always ask people, when we're talking about different parts of life that people are passionate about, first of all, how they get there and where they are now, and what makes you so dominant now?
Well, I definitely got where I am because of my wife. Marrying her 35 years ago was the best thing I ever did. And she's wonderfully effective at getting me to open my eyes to my blind spots so I can actually see my limitations. But if I want to give you one word to describe why I'm dominant, I'll share something Oprah taught me on her show years ago. It was my last day on the show. I was just launching my program. And she gave me a little quiz with her staff. She said, I want you to think of 3 people who are your friends. They got to be your friends. You'll see why in a second. And they got to tell you why they like you. But they only have one word to say it. Whatever word they use, that's who you are at your best to people who care about you. So I asked 3 people. Everyone can do that right now. Just text, loved ones. People are going to be honest with you. What's the one word that describes what you like about me? What part of me do you enjoy the most? And for me, the word was pretty clear. It's passion. I'm not the smartest person in the room all the time. I'm not the most insightful. I'm not always the most empathetic, but I'm almost always the most passionate. I really care that you understand what I'm trying to deliver. I really care that you do better and make yourself a better person because of it. I really care that you own your destiny. And so if I show up and I'm passionate, I know that I'll succeed. And the message of the Oprah team was, be that person on your show every single day, because that's how people will come into you. So everyone out there, do the same thing. Find out who you are at your best and be that person as best as you can so that you can continue to make your contribution to the world.
Wow, Doc, thank you. We really appreciate it. That's a great answer. And when you said passion, that was one of the first things that came through my mind when you said that question. So, man, it's just a pleasure. And you are so passionate in what you do, and so many people you've helped, in our lifetime. So for me, I'm just thrilled that we had a chance to talk to you in this platform.
It was great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Bless you all. Take care.
Hey, thank you for watching The Dominant Ones. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to know when we release our next episodes. And please let us know in the comments what makes you dominant.